GM, this is Pacman from Blur. Today, I'll be giving you an overview on strategy in Web3. I'll also give you a walkthrough on the NFT marketplace landscape, as well as the NFTfi landscape. To start us off, let's take a look at the various NFT marketplaces. Here you can see the weekly volume of each marketplace over the past 2 years. You can see that OpenSea dominated the NFT marketplace volume metrics for the first year, but then soon after Blur launched, Blur came to dominate NFT marketplace activity and has maintained its #1 spot ever since. To understand how Blur was able to do this, it's important to understand the landscape in which Blur launched before it existed. So here you can see OpenSea and other marketplaces. There's X2Y2 Looks Rare Gem, which is an NFT marketplace aggregator, and various niche marketplaces such as the CryptoPunks marketplace and Super Rare and Foundation. If you go top to bottom, Super Rare and Foundation, these marketplaces have very little market share. Their niche primarily focus on the art market. CryptoPunks is a specialized on-chain marketplace. It's created by Laravel Labs, which is the creator behind CryptoPunks, and it's just for trading CryptoPunks. And Gem is actually not a marketplace at all. It's actually an NFT marketplace aggregator. What it did is it allowed users to actually buy NFTs across the various marketplaces. So allow users to buy across Looks Rare, X2Y2, and OpenSea primarily. And Looks Rare and X2Y2, they were the most direct competitors to OpenSea. Their primary differentiation is that they had their own token and they launched their own token incentive programs. But those incentive programs did not work. And in this walkthrough, I'll explain why their incentive programs did not work. Now, Blur was actually very different. It differentiated itself by launching the first NFT marketplace targeted towards pro traders. And again, later in this walkthrough, I'll explain exactly why that market positioning worked and how Blur was able to succeed. In addition to launching a NFT marketplace that's effectively a spot marketplace, Blur also launched Blend, which is the #1 NFT lending protocol. Blend stands for Blur Lending. And here you can see, as soon as Blend launched, it became the #1 NFT lending protocol effectively immediately. To give you a quick overview of some of the other NFTfi protocols, the most popular prior to Blend were NFTfi, as well as BendDAO. NFTfi was a peer-to-peer lending protocol, so individuals were making loans to each other. And BendDAO was a peer-to-pool lending protocol. So instead of individuals lending to each other, NFT holders could borrow directly against the pool. This model was very similar to Compound and Aave, if you're familiar with lending protocols in the DeFi landscape. Blend is actually quite different from NFTfi and BendDAO. It's actually the first NFT lending protocol that's both peer-to-peer and perpetual. So the loans in Blend actually don't have an expiration date. They continue forever until the borrower either closes their loan or the lender calls the loan. Now, to understand why Blur became the top NFT marketplace and lending protocol so quickly, it's important to understand what Blur is as a product. Here on Blur's collections page, you can see that Blur is actually very data-oriented. It looks almost like a Bloomberg terminal, if you're familiar with that. For traders, data is their bread and butter. They want to see all the information and as quickly as possible. So all of the data on Blur actually updates in real time. It's very similar to like if you're using a pro exchange like Binance or Upbit, where everything's updating instantly in real time all the time. And if you click into a specific collection, so in this case, we're looking at DeGods, you can see that again, Blur's collection page is very data heavy. On the left here, you can see normal trait filters, right? You can filter by background, clothes, eyes, etc. This is what you would normally expect on an NFT marketplace. But on the right, this interface is quite different. Instead of just showing you the image and the name, which is what most marketplaces do, Blur shows you a ton of data about each listing, shows you the rarity, the price, the last sale, the top bid, and a number of other data. In addition, Blur shows a live activity feed on the right, as well as sales charts and other types of charts like the depth chart on the bottom right. And again, just to highlight Blur's orientation towards bro traders, Blur also has an advanced view that actually splits out the listings and the sales side by side. So here, if you're a trader that's trying to watch a specific collection in real time, you can actually see advanced data side by side, all updating live in real time. And here are the different charts that Blur offers. You can see the depth chart and the sales chart, and the sales chart can even be expanded to a larger sales chart. And all of these advanced tools are basically creating a user experience that's much better for pro traders than any other NFT marketplace. And not only that, but Blur's lending protocol Blend is directly integrated into the marketplace. So here you can see on Blur all of the different loans active on a marketplace. This view is a chart of all the different loans. And on the right here, you can see a table of different loans. And you can see that there's 161 active loans on the Bored Ape collection. Now, why did this product actually win? OpenSea at the time was the leading NFT marketplace. They had all the network effects. How is it possible for a new marketplace, even though it was differentiated, to succeed? To understand why it worked, it's important to take a look at the token exchange market, because the token market is actually quite similar to the NFT market, except it's about 5 years ahead in terms of its market development and infrastructure. So if you look at tokens and how those were traded, let's take a look at Bitcoin as an example. Initially, Bitcoin trading was very retail oriented. You had exchanges like Mt. Gox and Coinbase. Coinbase launched and created a very retail friendly way to buy and sell Bitcoin. And this dominated trading initially, but over time, the participants became more advanced. You had institutions and market makers coming into the game, and the platforms became more advanced as well. So after Coinbase, you had advanced exchanges like Binance, OKX, Deribit, BitMEX, all offering more financialized and advanced products like futures, options, perpetuals, margin. And it's the exchanges that offered all of these advanced products that ended up becoming the leading exchanges in the market. And so the reason why we knew there was a large market opportunity in Blur is because we studied the token market and we realized that the NFT market prior to Blur's launch was very similar to the early token market. It was very retail dominated, but there was a lot of pro trading activity going on, but no marketplace that was oriented towards pro traders and had the features that pro traders needed, such as advanced charting, real-time trading, and a lending protocol built into the marketplace directly. And so the first step to Blur's strategy was identifying a huge unmet market need. And we knew that this market need was real and existed because we were active in the market ourselves as NFT traders, but also because we could see from the token exchange market that the NFT market would professionalize and grow more advanced over time. Now, that was just step one. Step two was building a winning product. To do that, we focus on speed. Here you can see a comment from one of the early Blur users. Blur is so fast, I thought it was wrong. It just took a while to update on everything else. So for pro traders, speed is the most important thing. We made sure to build the fastest marketplace in the market. And we stayed in private beta until we had best-in-class retention. So this is how we measured product market fit. We wanted to make sure before we launched that Blur was a winning product and that if we conducted any marketing campaigns or growth campaigns to bring people to Blur, that they would stick around. So we measured visitor retention. Here you can see in private beta that Blur's visitor retention was extremely high in the 40 to 60% range. So what this means is that people who came to Blur for the first time 30 days later, around 40 to 60% of those visitors would come back. Our transaction retention was also extremely high in the 30 to 50% range. So again, what this means is if someone transacted on Blur, 30 days later, around 30 to 50% of those people would come back. And this is an extremely high retention rate, not only in Web3, but also in Web2. So by staying in private beta until we had this best-in-class retention, we knew that when we launched, we would be able to retain users that came to try out Blur. And finally, in order to make sure the launch was as successful as possible, we launched a token incentive program that actually is what we're most famous for, but is actually very similar to Curve's token incentive program. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Curve, Curve is a leading stablecoin DEX. It allows you to trade stablecoins across different pairs. And it's very, very liquid. The way it gets this liquidity is it actually incentivizes liquidity using its token. So Curve doesn't incentivize trading volume. What it does is it incentivizes liquidity for stablecoins, and it's that liquidity that actually attracts traders and basically leads to higher volume. But importantly, it's not incentivizing volume directly, because if you incentivize volume directly, you get wash trading. And so these were actually the failures of some of the predecessors to Blur, like LooksRare and X2Y2. LooksRare and X2Y2 both incentivize marketplace volume directly. And all that did is it led to a ton of wash trading with no real usage. And not only that, but LooksRare and X2Y2 were directly competing with OpenSea. So they weren't identifying a new market need. And their products were actually worse than OpenSea. So they not only did not identify a new market need, but they also did not build a best-in-class product. Blur, on the other hand, identified an unmet market need, stayed in private beta until it had a best-in-class product, and then finally launched a token incentive program that incentivized the right thing versus the wrong thing. So in this case, the right thing is liquidity and the wrong thing is volume. Blur incentivized liquidity in a very similar way to Curve. And we actually gamified it as well. So here you can see this rolling 24-hour leaderboard. It made participating in the token incentive program more fun. And what this program did is it rewarded the traders that provided liquidity on Blur, which is the most important thing for a marketplace or any sort of exchange-like business or protocol, with the native Blur token. So this is a key difference between Web 2 and Web 3. In Web 2, the end users have no control over the products that they're using. But in Web 3, you can actually give the end users control over the protocols that they're using. And you can reward them with that control. So in this case, the traders who are using Blur and providing liquidity, not only did they get to use Blur and have a best-in-class product and protocol, but they also were rewarded with the Blur token, which gave them governance rights over the protocol. It allowed them to change key parameters, including the protocol fee switch. And something that's a little bit unique to Blur is that because so much of the NFT marketplace activity goes through the Blur protocol, the Blur token effectively became a proxy for the NFT market. It effectively became an index for the NFT market. So this was a very nice reward for the traders who are actively using the protocol. So to summarize this, the reason why Blur was able to become the #1 NFT marketplace in only 3 months and maintain its market share ever since is because of 3 things. 1, it solved for an unmet market need. NFT trading was advancing, but no marketplace had yet to build the NFT marketplace for pro traders. 2, it built a best-in-class product and protocol. Blur stayed in private beta until its retention was extremely high. The visitor retention was 40 to 60%, and the transaction retention was 30 to 50%. And then finally, it rewarded its users with a token that gave them control over the protocol and gave them an index exposure to the NFT market. And it rewarded them for doing the right things versus the wrong things. The right things in this case was liquidity, as opposed to the wrong thing, which is volume. And it's only by combining those three components that Blur was able to overtake OpenSea and become the #1 NFT marketplace in such a short period of time. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.